Welcome to our Free Speech Zone, where we do a deep dive into trauma and reintegration. This is Combat Citizen. Welcome back to the Combat Citizen Trauma and Reintegration Podcast, and I'm trying to take that slower this time, and it actually sounded good. So anyways, it is a beautiful morning in the neighborhood today. Blue sky and a little bit of clouds here in Oregon, which is nice. So we've had a good couple of episodes. The last one was pretty good. So thank you everybody for listening and also subscribing and also sharing. So would appreciate the shares across the board. We've got a lot of people in a lot of different areas of the country that are listening. So
sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. Yes. Thank you, Andy. So we are continuing the series with Joy Montgomery on the Reboot camp and the job search roadmap. So I think we're at part 6. Actually, yeah, that's actually perfect. Episode 6, part 6 in the job search roadmap, which is the deliver packet by email. So welcome back, Joy.
Thank you. When you said a beautiful day in the neighborhood, I thought I was going to be talking to Mr. Rogers.
That's what I was thinking too. That's what I was just driving here, and I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful neighbor in the neighborhood. Oh, I just quoted Mr. Rogers. Okay. Can I use that? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
A gentleman and a scholar, by the way.
Thank you.
We miss him dearly.
Yeah, I know. He's... All right. So the next part here is deliver packet by email or snail mail or fax. We still do fax, whatever works. So as always, I'm going to give the floor to Joy, but first I'll start off with the first section, and it talks about if you're emailing your packet. So
all right.
It's all you, Joy.
Okay. And of course, if you're emailing, it's going to be different from the other ways that you can deliver it. One of the things when you email, you want to be sure that you have a PDF. There are some companies that insist on having a Word document, and you can run into a little trouble with that, but you do what they want. Ideally, the PDF prevents any corruption from happening to your file. And most companies are more comfortable with that because it's less likely to carry a virus.
Oh, okay.
There are occasions when somebody will say they want the resume in the body of the email, and then you probably are going to have to do add some spaces and stuff because the formatting will get broken when you turn it into just plain text. You still want it to look decent.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, of course, sending it to a specific person with either a copy to yourself or a blind copy to yourself.
Okay. Now, how important it is, so you were talking about putting it into the body of the letter, the difference between that and actually just attaching it.
Right. Okay. And it depends on what the company says they want. So sometimes you're stuck putting it in as text, and then you do have to fiddle with it a little bit to make it look nice.
Yeah, I would probably go more with the attachment because you don't have to worry about the formatting issues that happen, especially with different people's email programs.
Yeah, but sometimes a company will say they will only accept a resume within the body of the email. So then you're stuck with the tweaking it to make it look decent.
Sure.
Otherwise, you just have a solid block of text. You need some white space in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cool. So that is emailing. Next section on here was if you're snail mailing your packet. Ooh, I like snail mail.
And this is kind of fun. When I was at a job club years ago, we had a young fellow from Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And we were explaining to people about using good quality paper and preferably white or cream colored, 100% cotton. And he was sitting there looking at us with this puzzled expression. After the session was over, he came to me and he said, where I find paper? In my country, you go to a store, you open door, you say, you have paper? They say, no. And you close the door, you go to the next door, you open door, you say, you have paper? And they yell, no. And when you come to the store and they say, yes, come in, you take paper and you love the paper because it's your paper. And he said, and for him, it didn't matter what kind of paper it was if you were lucky enough to get some paper. So I actually took him to a copy place and I asked the lady if she could show him some 100% cotton paper with matching envelope. I thought he was just going to faint from sheer pleasure looking at it. But it is important because when you're actually sending a physical copy, the feel of the resume even helps to present you favorably.
So it just kind of goes with a lot of other things where presentation is important. So the feel of it, the look of it is as important as the content, right?
Right.
Interesting.
And then your cover letter, you're actually going to sign it legibly and make sure that it's a kind of a bold signature. You know, you're not going to do like the Declaration of Independence with your
wide swooping, like, yeah.
But a little bit bigger than the font in the letter and nice and clear. You're not applying for a job as a doctor, so the pharmacist doesn't have to interpret whatever that scrawl is at the bottom.
So not my signature normally.
And then the important part is not to put it in a regular envelope. You either put it in a 6x9 or a 9x12 envelope and hand address it. Because then when it hits a mailroom, the people in the mailroom are not sure if it's a personal correspondence and they may not open it.
Oh,
because they may have instructions if it's a resume to send it off to someone else other than the person you want it to go to.
Huh. Interesting.
So if it looks like it might be a personal correspondence with that person you've addressed it to, it's likely to make it to their desk. It's more likely to get there. And it again gives kind of a favorable impression because it stands out. You know, even if it's in a stack of envelopes, that envelope is a different size. Hopefully if you can find a envelope in the same paper as the paper you use, that's good. But if you can't, a white envelope is better than manila.
So what's the difference between the white envelope and the manila?
Manila looks like junk mail.
Oh, okay.
A white envelope kind of stands out from the other big envelopes.
Interesting. Okay.
So out of curiosity, Joy, the size of the envelope, is that I don't know, is that kind of a thing? Like, would you tell a person that you want to do the wider envelope where it takes a folded in half sheet instead of a trifold sheet?
Absolutely. Because they get thousands of the regular size mail, and you want yours to stand out. You also want the resume. I mean, if you do a 9x12 envelope, there aren't even many creases in your beautiful resume.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is I think to be, hearing this approach, I think having if I were to open up a 9x12 envelope and resume coming out of it, it'd be nice to be able to see the full sheet without having to unfold it. And I think that would be more impressive than say, okay, so now I got to unfold it and, uncrease it to a point where I can actually read all the words. I think it'd be more impressive with just the full sheet being able to pull out of the envelope.
And it does make an impression. It's just like the way you dress for an interview. It's all of the things that you can do to make your resume stand out. your piece of mail stand out and get past the mailroom and past the gatekeepers to where you want it to go.
Sure.
If you've made the effort already to identify the exact person you want to get your resume.
So do we identify when you do actually send your envelope, you're actually identifying somebody that you're sending it to?
Right.
Okay.
And that's something you did earlier with all of your research, was to find the right person to send it to. All of your networking, everything you've done has set you up to address this to the right person. Now, if it's just going to HR, then you probably don't have to take these special efforts. But probably if it's just going to HR, it's going to be an email packet anyway. So when you're snail mailing, you're almost always sending it to a specific person who you identified, either through newspaper articles or some kind of maybe a journal article that they did or a speech that they did. So you have a person's name that you know hires the kind of people you are.
Oh, okay. I like that. Okay. All right, let's move on. The next section is the if you're faxing your packet. So I want to hear about this one. This one sounds cool.
And that's kind of interesting because you totally lose control when you're faxing. You have no idea what quality the receiving machine is.
Yeah, you can get the cheapest paper that comes out, or wherever your fax machine is.
Well, so your copy that you fax pretty much has to be on bright white paper, so it has the best possible impact. So the letters really stand out. The differentiation is really clear. And then hopefully you have a company contact. This is usually the kind of resume that's going to HR rather than to a specific person. Now, with all of these, even though you're sending a packet ahead of time, you have exactly the same packet to bring with you to the interview.
Okay.
So you set that aside because it's going to match what they have in front of them.
Right. Okay.
But you customize it, so you don't want to show up with a resume that's different.
Yeah, I think that would kind of be the wrong impression. Sorry, I have an updated one. Can I give this to you instead of the one that you actually got from me originally?
Yeah, give me that resume. I didn't like it there.
I added like a whole section and I took out a bunch of nonsense.
And of course, you did that already when you prepared it.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're doing your whole, your management file and all that, and actually that runs into the next section. So the next section on there is update your job search management file. After you do all that, so.
Right, and of course, this might be if people took advantage of the free offer from Jibber. They might be using that for their job search management file.
Oh.
And I believe that will actually let you know that it's time for you to do the follow-up.
Oh, this has reminders and whatnot?
Uh-huh.
Oh. Okay. I think we mentioned this before, so definitely I think that should be something that somebody can check out. Was it jibberjobber.com, right?
Right. And I hope people jump on that offer because it's a really nice offer. The fellow, he was looking for a job himself when he dreamt this up, and he thought there has to be a better way to do this. So since there wasn't, he made one.
I think that's great. I mean, I've checked out the website and it seems pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, we got through that section. So that was the delivering your packet to either the individual that you're wanting to speak with and have an interview with, or the HR department, depends on how you send the document. So, all right, wanted to jump into the next section, which is create your portfolio. And if anybody else is following along on the website, the rebootcamp.us job search roadmap, we are on number 7, which is, you got to scroll down almost to the bottom. So it's create your portfolio. So so the next section is get a good quality leather portfolio that will handle protector sheets that carry a full unpunched page.
Yeah, there are different kinds of protective sheets, and with some of them, you actually have to punch to match the punches, and it just doesn't give as good an impression. There are protective sheets that have that extra flap on them that has the holes. So you're able to pull the sheet out if you need to.
Sure.
And sometimes you might want to do that. One of the things when you're in an interview, if people ask you, like you have writing samples or some kind of samples in your portfolio, if they ask you to leave them, don't do that.
Oh, okay.
So you might want to pull something out just to turn it around and be able to look at it together, but you're going to put it back in.
So you're never going to leave something that you have your person with them, right? Is what you're saying?
Right. You send them your resume and the cover letter, and if they seem persistent about wanting you to leave samples and stuff, try to turn it around and say that you would be, really happy to do that after a job offer, or you'd be happy to share anything you've got once you get to work there. But you're trying not to be used, because there are people who simply want to get what they can get out of a bunch of interviews without hiring anyone.
So get somebody's knowledge or experience without actually having those people on their payroll. Wow.
Right.
Sneaky. Those are sneaky people.
Oh my gosh. I had one interview years ago that taught me this lesson. And it was with a company where one of the things they did, the guy was really friendly, and he said, "Oh, by the way, we have someone from the last company you worked with working here. You probably know," and it was a company that had thousands of employees.
Oh, geez.
And he said, "Come in, Joy is here." And this lady walked in, and I had seen her in the cafeteria at the other company, but we didn't know each other. But of course, this was supposed to make me feel really comfortable there. And then he said, one of the things we really are trying to figure out is how to organize the information in our user guide better. And I wonder if maybe you might put together a suggestion for that. I said, "Oh, sure." They didn't want to hire anybody. They just wanted somebody to do that task.
Oh, geez.
So I never heard from them again after I delivered that.
Oh, no. Well, that's a good lesson to learn.
And a lot of companies have been doing that. So you kind of pitiful that you have to be on guard about something like that. So there you are. You're there with your beautiful portfolio. And the person who did a session for us years ago on preparing a portfolio said he never failed to get a job offer when he showed up with his portfolio.
Huh.
And one of the things with the portfolio is when you get there, you open it up. If the person who's interviewing you asks you a question about the resume that you have, or they ask about any samples of your work, you turn it around. You need to be good at reading upside down, so you turn it around so you can point out things while you're talking. And this is a fuller brush trick.
Okay.
Fuller brush sales when you go to the door and the lady of the house, which is how they work things, and the lady of the house opened the door, the first thing you did was put something in their hand, a vegetable brush, a fingernail brush, whatever it was, some small item. So they were holding it while you talked to them. And then when they say they aren't going to buy anything and you try to take that back from them, they already have a feeling of ownership.
Oh, okay.
They're probably going to buy it. And that's what happens when you turn the portfolio around in front of them and you're pointing things out and it's on their side of the table, is they get that full flesh feeling.
So basically now you're being the sneaky person.
Yes, they start to feel like they need to buy you.
So what can I do to buy you? Just let me know. You've shown me a good product. How can I buy you? We're like, okay. Cool. There's a section in here that is interesting. Assemble your proofs in the portfolio in categories that will facilitate your interview.
So if you were going to apply for a job doing as an inventory control manager, then you might put together some samples of the kind of paperwork you did as an inventory manager. And if company rules did not allow you to keep any kind of documentation from previous jobs, which is often the case, you can certainly put together a fictitious company, and let the people know, I was not allowed to share any of the documentation because they probably have the same rules, so they're going to appreciate that. So I put together some samples of how I do this work.
Oh.
And then you might have different categories, so there might be something about how you set up the inventory space. And there might be something about Kanban. You'll have different categories with tabs. So when the interviewer is asking specific questions about different areas of the job, you can quickly open to that category and point things out.
It seems like visual. Well, I've always believed that visual is better than trying to, explain something. You can at least show something. I think that kind of adds more value to the conversation, at least with in an interview, at least.
Yeah, and certainly, you can do an Excel spreadsheet on your own computer and simulate what you would do in an actual workplace if you can't have real stuff from the company where you work. I remember one company when I was in my exit interview, I said, I would like to have samples of the manuals I've done here. And they sat and thought about it for a while, and they decided that they would let me have the cover page, the table of contents, and the index.
Okay.
Well, the cover page was my own design, so that was useful. Not everyone does a good job of organizing information, so the table of contents was useful.
Huh.
And good index are to find. A lot of people do very bad indexes. So it wound up being useful. And it seemed kind of silly. Instead of a whole manual, here I had a scattering of pages, but I could make use of it and make it work in the interview.
Interesting.
And that's what the portfolio is. It's a little bit like if you were doing a Broadway play, there would be all kinds of instructions about where everybody would stand and how they would be posed and everything.
Sure.
And the portfolio adds this to your interview. It gives you the staging.
Okay. So it basically helps you in the interview, in the conversation. Is that what I'm getting? Right?
It helps you kind of be in control of the interview.
Oh, okay.
And once somebody asks you a question, then it allows you, instead of fumbling for an answer or anything, you actually have stuff that you can show them and talk about. And it also allows them to see your enthusiasm about the kind of work you do, your pride in your work.
Sure. Huh.
And a lot of times in an interview, who you are doesn't come across because you're nervous, this allows you to orchestrate an interview to your advantage.
Well, because you essentially have a script in front of you. And then a lot of times, when you're nervous, and at least I've done it before, you forget stuff. And then I especially love the question when somebody asks you at the end of an interview, do you have anything else? Do you have something you'd like to ask us? Do you have any questions? And I'm usually like, no, I don't. Because you're like, it's not there, right? And I would think that this would definitely help you, because you'd be like, oh, okay, so let me think about it. Let me look at the piece of paper. Oh yeah, I do have a question by blah 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 blah. Yeah, I think that would.
The portfolio kind of turns it into a two-way conversation instead of kind of a grilling by the other person.
Right.
So more the chance. And in fact, you can say, do you have any questions about this at some point?
Huh. Interesting. So that leads us. Go ahead.
We haven't gotten to interviews yet, but if you don't have questions, you're probably not going to get the job. And of course, almost everyone on their way home from the interview thinks of all the things they meant to ask. And we'll talk about that when we talk about interviews too.
Right. That there is a question though. There's a last question on this create your portfolio that would lead most likely into that interview questions. So the last section and the last question that I'll ask you is practice responding to typical interview questions with the portfolio facing an interviewer until you are completely comfortable with the portfolio as a prop. So last question I'm going to ask you, and then so practicing typical interview questions, I would think it'd be pretty important.
It's very important. And the kind of things that they're going to ask. If you think about it, you can anticipate most of the questions that will be asked in an interview.
Sure. Like, where did you come from?
Or, what would you do in this kind of a situation? And hopefully they ask a question like that, and you can actually point to something in your resume where you have handled that kind of a situation.
I think that's awesome.
Usually if you've done your homework, your resume does have exactly the kind of things they're going to be asking questions about because they told you what they were interested in.
Sure. Oh yeah. Well, and having a reference too in that interview, definitely opens it up to so much, because with the first impression, right? Your first impression is the most important. So being organized in that interview, I mean, we're not even in an interview yet, but with a portfolio and with a script in front of you, I would think you're hands down a lot better than the majority of people that are going to be interviewing, that are just sitting there going, yeah, let me try to remember that one. Hold on a second. Okay. You out that door, just leave. I don't want to hear you. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think when you prepare a portfolio, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to view yourself differently too. You're going to say, oh, wow, I am the right person for this job.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and it's gonna give you more confidence in the end of it. So, cool. Well, that was 2 sections today. Hopefully we can finish it out on the next episode we record. I really appreciate this ability to go through this job search roadmap with you, Joy.
It's a lot of fun, Ryan.
Yeah.
Mr.